It's been common knowledge for a while now that records have been making a comeback. Vinyl records are one of the only music formats whose sales have actually seen an increase in recent years. Now, people may prefer records for a lot of reasons. Some like their sound better, some enjoy having their music collection in a physical format that they can pick up and play, and others just like to put album covers in frames to show off. But whatever the reason people prefer records, we can all agree that there's one area where vinyl can't compete with digital music: portability. Unless you're ready to lug one of these big turntables under your arm, records are hard to take with you on the go. So if you want to listen to your record collection when you're out and about, there's one obvious solution: get a digital version of your albums. That's why this video is here. In this video, we're going to go through how you can transfer your records to great sounding digital files you can take anywhere, using a few pieces of software and hardware. It's a different process than simply ripping a CD, but I think it can be very interesting and rewarding. We'll be going over how to connect your turntable to your computer, how to set up the proper audio levels on your computer, how to record your vinyl using Audacity, how to edit and fine-tune the recording you've made, and how to export the recording into audio files you can use every day. Now you may be asking, Roy Unit, why should I take the time to record my vinyl records onto my computer when I can just get digital versions somewhere else? Well, the answer is you don't have to. There are a lot of newly released records that come with a download code so you can get a digital version of the album online. Even if they don't, you can still get digital versions of many albums through other sources as well. But there are still good reasons why you might want to record your own digital versions of a record. Sometimes albums are mastered differently on vinyl than they are on digital formats, and you may prefer the sound of the vinyl version. You may not want to spend the money buying an album you already have again in another format. And there's the issue of availability. If you have an uncommon record, it may not have been published in a digital format. Of course, the most popular music from the past 60 years has almost definitely been released on CD, but there are still many albums out there that simply weren't well known enough to be released digitally when the music industry switched to CD audio. So, if your record collection includes obscure or older releases, making a digital transfer of those records might be the best way of getting them on your computer. In short, there are several reasons why you might want to digitize your records this way. To make a digital transfer of your records, you will need a few tools in order to connect your turntable to your computer and record audio. The exact tools you'll need depend on the kind of turntable you're using. If you have a turntable with a built-in USB port, connecting it to a computer is easy. Just plug a USB cable into the slot on the turntable and connect the other end to your computer, and now you should be ready to record. If your turntable doesn't have a USB adapter, which most models actually don't, connecting it to your computer will be a bit more complicated, but fortunately it's not too difficult. Assuming you've already got your turntable set up, connected to an amplifier, and ready to play, there's only a couple of things you'll need: a stereo analog to digital converter with a USB connector, and a stereo RCA audio cable. Analog to digital converters are made by a number of companies and usually aren't very expensive. Shop around to find a converter that is well made and works well. Customer reviews are your friend. This is the one I use. It's a Behringer Uphono UFO 202. It was about $40 online. Try to find a converter that has female RCA audio jacks as an input. RCA cables are easy to recognize by their big red and white plastic ends. The cable needs to have male connectors at each end in order to plug into the female jacks on your other equipment. You'll want to make sure you get an audio cable that is shielded to prevent electrical interference. It's also important to get a cable long enough to reach from your amplifier to the converter. You'll need to plug your RCA cable into a stereo output on your amplifier or receiver. If you use a phono preamplifier to connect from your turntable to a receiver, plug the connectors on one end of the cable into the output jacks on the preamplifier. Remember to match the colors on your cable with the colors on the amplifier. Red matches red for right channel, and white matches white for the left channel. If your receiver has a built-in phono preamp, Find a stereo output on the back of the receiver and plug the cable into there. The jacks are usually labeled out or something similar to that. On my receiver, I use the jacks designed to output audio to a tape deck. Remember again to match the colors on the cable with the colors on the receiver jacks. Once you've plugged your cable into the correct jacks on your amplifier or receiver, plug the other end into the jacks on your USB converter, the ones labeled input. We're now ready to connect our turntable to the computer. Plug your connector into the PC's USB port and the adapter should be recognized fairly quickly. I should mention that I'm using Windows 10 for this demonstration, so the connected audio adapter will show up under the audio icon in the right-hand corner of my taskbar. Here we right-click on the audio icon and select Recording Devices to show which devices are connected and can record. This should work similarly with Windows 7, 8, etc. And if you're using a Mac, your audio devices will likely show up in your top taskbar. Now, we look through the devices and see our adapter. We now know that the device is connected, but it's important to make sure that it's set up correctly. So we click on the device in the menu and choose Properties. Now we click on the Advanced tab here, and we see the default format. This is important to check because the device may not be set up to record at a good quality when we first plug it in. As you can see here, it's set to one channel CD quality, which is mono, and that's not something we want when we're recording a stereo album. So make sure it's set to at least 44,100 Hz stereo or CD quality. If your device is able to capture audio at a higher sample rate, then by all means choose that. My analog to digital adapter can sample audio at 48,000 Hz, so I will choose that setting. Going higher than 48 kHz though is probably overkill, since 48 kHz already captures more frequencies than humans can hear. So, once we selected our sampling rate, we click on Apply, and we close the window. At this point, you will need some software to record the audio that comes into your computer, and that's where Audacity comes in. There are several other software suites that you can use to capture audio, but I recommend Audacity because it's simply designed and has a lot of great features. Plus, it's completely free and open source. You can download the latest version of it right now at the publisher's website. For this video, I'll be using version 2.0.5, but don't worry if you have another version. Things aren't likely to be too different. When we open up Audacity, most of the screen will be blank. This is where the audio tracks will show up when we start recording. Before we start, we need to make sure that the program is set up to receive audio from the adapter we plugged in. To do that, simply click on the drop-down menu next to the microphone icon and look for the device. In this case, it's identified as Microphone USB Audio Codec. Once that's done, check the bottom left corner of the screen to make sure the program is recording at the correct sample rate. This should be the same rate as we set for the adapter, in this case 48,000 Hz. Now that that's done, it's time to get our records ready to transfer. For this video, I'll be recording a copy of King Crimson's 1974 album Red. Now Red is simply an amazing album and one of King Crimson's best. I'll be doing a review of it after this video. I've already cleaned this record before, so all it needs now is a quick dry brushing to remove any dust before I start playing it. Make sure the record you're transferring is clean too. If it has fingerprints or lots of dirt on it, you'll want to wash it before you play it. Washing your records is a subject for another video though, so I'll leave you to find the best cleaning method for now. I also recommend cleaning your turntable stylus before you start recording to get the best audio signal possible. Okay, now that the record is set up, it's time to get our recording levels set up in Audacity. The recording level is set using this bar next to the microphone icon. Getting the right level on the recording is very important. If the input level is set too high, the audio will distort and cause clipping. That will ruin the recording. We want to make sure that during the transfer the audio levels never get too high. So to figure out what recording level to use, we'll make a quick test recording and play the loudest part of the album. This will show us how high the maximum volume of the recording will be. First, we'll click the record button and drop the needle at the right place. So this short test recording has shown us where the volume needs to be to record the album. For me, 0.54 works as the ideal level for recording. It gives me plenty of headroom for recording to make sure that I don't encounter any clipping, and it's sure to include all the dynamic range. It's good to have your recording level set a little low to make sure you don't get any distortion. The level should be peaking no higher than -6 decibels, as you can see in this graph. Now that we've set the right input level, it's time to make the recording. Let's go ahead and delete this track by clicking the X in the top left corner of the track bar here. Okay, now we click record and go over to the turntable and drop the needle on the first track. The audio signal from the record is now being digitized in real time to the computer. The great thing about using Audacity and other similar software is that we don't have to worry about creating a new recording for every song on the album. That can be done later after we've finished transferring. Right now, just sit back and let the entire side play through. Now once side 1 is finished, we hit pause in the Audacity control panel, flip the record over, unpause the recording on Audacity, and drop the needle on side 2. Pretty simple. You'll notice a gap here where the needle has gone into the run-out groove on side 1, and then another where we've dropped the needle on the lead-in groove of the other side. Don't worry about that. We'll edit it out when the recording is finished. When side 2 is finished, hit stop on Audacity and turn off the turntable. The transfer is done. The first thing we want to do now is save the recording we've just made as an Audacity project file. The last thing we want now is to lose almost 45 minutes of work to a system crash. Go to File and click Save Project. There will be a little warning box that comes up, but that's just saying that the file is being saved as an Audacity file and not as a standard audio file. That's okay, this is what we want now. So click on OK and save. Now that the audio is safely stored on the hard disk, we can get to the fun part of editing and getting it all ready to save as audio files. Remember those empty spaces in between the audio at the beginning and end of each side? Well, this is where we take those out, and leave only the actual music to export. A lot of people like the sound of a needle hitting the groove, but I'm going to assume here that you don't want to listen to that every time you play the album on your iPod. So here I have the entire recording shown on the screen, and what I'll do is zoom in to see just the very start. I pick the selection tool, and click on the waveform right near the beginning. Now I zoom in. Notice how we're seeing more and more of the waveform in detail as we zoom in. Okay, once we've got to a close enough zoom level, we can scroll to the left to hit the very beginning. We can see here the point where the recording starts, to the point where the needle hits the record, and the point where the music starts. Go up to the control buttons and hit the skip back button to move the cursor to the very start. Now just click and drag from the start point up to the point where the first track starts. We've now selected all the empty silence and noise leading up to the music itself. Now we can go ahead and delete it either by hitting the delete key on the keyboard or by clicking on the Trim button here. Now that empty audio has been removed and the start of the first song has been moved up to the start of the recording. We'll do the same with the space between the two sides of the record. Zoom back out on the recording, click on the silent space between the two sides, and zoom back in. Now we can select everything between the point where side 1 ends and the point where side 2 begins. And again, we'll just edit it out with the delete key. Now side 1 and 2 flow seamlessly together. And if there's any extra silence after the last song on the album ends, we can skip to the very end and edit that out. Now the recording contains only the music on the album and nothing extra. If you've got everything you want taken out, go ahead and save the project again. If your record was clean and in good condition when you transferred its audio, there shouldn't be too many pops or clicks on the recording. But if there are and you want to get rid of them before you export the album, Audacity has a few tools you can use to iron out those extra noises and leave only clean sound behind. As an example, right here in the middle of the song Starless, there's a few ticks that come up right about where the music goes quiet. Now we don't want those to distract us from such a dramatic moment in the song, so let's go in and try to get rid of them. One of the tools we can use for this is click removal, which is programmed to do exactly what it says. First we'll click and drag to select the audio we want to repair, like this, and then we'll click on Effect and click Removal. This tool has two settings, threshold and max spike width. I personally like to set the threshold to about 120 to 130 and the maximum spike width from 30 to 40. So now it will scan the audio we've highlighted and try to remove the extra clicks. Now you can see by the waveform that the clicks have been lessened. Let's listen and see what it sounds like. Well, as you probably heard, they've been lessened, but the clicks are still there. If you're not happy with how the click removal has worked, you can select Undo to remove its effects, and then try again with different settings. You don't always have to remove the click completely as long as you can get it to a level that isn't as noticeable and works for you. I want to say again that you should save your work every few minutes while you're doing this, just in case something happens to your computer. Now, if click removal won't remove the clicks as well as you want, there is another tool for doing very fine tweaks to the audio, and that is the Repair tool. The Repair tool will only work with very small sections of audio, so we'll have to use it for one click at a time. This tool is more for smaller problem areas of the audio that you want to make sure are fixed. To use Repair, we put the cursor on the spot where a click happens, like say here, zoom in until we can see the click very clearly in the waveform. Like so, the waveform is coming into more and more detail. And now we click on Effect and Repair. And that's it. The tool has analyzed the surrounding audio and normalized the click to make it fit. Once that's done, we can zoom back out and go on to the next click. You can do this for as many clicks as you think is necessary. Now that our album has been recorded and edited to play smoothly, let's just make sure that it will have a decent volume when we play it back. Remember how I said we should make our transfer at a lower volume to avoid clipping? Well, now we can use the Amplifier tool to bring that volume back up for the final export. You don't have to do this step. If you're happy with the level you've recorded at, just leave it like it is. Make sure nothing is selected on the track by just clicking once anywhere on the waveform, like this. Now we click on Effects and Amplify. Now Audacity has selected the entire track and is showing the maximum amplification we can apply before the audio hits 0 decibels. Now, I like to aim a little lower than 0 to avoid any clipping and keep the dynamic range of the music as high as possible. So down below in this box, we'll click here and enter -1 decibels. Don't set your amplification to anything higher than 0, because you will get clipping and distortion in your sound. Now we hit OK, and the program will amplify the audio. So we see here that the waveform of our recording has gotten a bit bigger. This will let us play the album without turning up the volume too high. Now there's just one step left before we export the recording as ordinary music files. Label the songs and album information. This way, when we play a track from the album on our computer or phone or iPod, the player will be able to display the name of the song and artist that's playing. Let's start by entering general information about the album. Click on File and Edit Metadata. What appears is a table with information that's a lot like a music playlist. In the box next to Artist, we put in, obviously, the name of our artist. So I'm going to type in King Crimson. Leave the title box blank for now. That will be filled in just a minute when we label our individual songs. Now we enter the album name and any other details we want. When you're done, click OK. So now we have the album information saved, but what about individual songs? You've probably noticed by now that there's nothing separating one song from another in this recording. Well, that's what track labels are for. Move your cursor to the very start of the first song. Now click on Tracks and go down to Add Label at Selection. Now down here a new bar has appeared. If we click inside of it, we can start typing the title of the first song. Once that's done, click outside the label or hit Enter. Now we move on to the second track. Find the space between the first and second songs. You may need to zoom in to find just the right spot. We want to select just before the next song starts. That's it. So now we go to Tracks again and Add Label. Now we type in the title. We repeat this for each song on the album. Okay, now we've labeled each song on the album. I've zoomed out here to show them all. Now it's finally time to export the transfer we've made into whatever file format we want. All that's left to do is go to File and Export Multiple. Be sure you click Export Multiple. If you just click on Export, the entire recording will be saved as a single audio file. Export Multiple will save each song that we've labeled as its own file. When we click on Export Multiple, we get several options. The first one is for selecting the format to export in. Audacity supports a lot of different audio codecs, although some of them require a separate plugin to work. If you want to save your album as MP3 files, you'll need to download a small free plugin called Lame, which works great. I'll put a link in the description to show where to get it. Now for me, I want to have this album in a high-resolution, lossless format, so I will choose FLAC files. We can also choose the encoding quality of the files by clicking Options. This lets you set the bit rate for your files. The higher the setting, the higher the sound quality. For FLAC, I find level 7 out of 8 works well. Down here, we pick the directory on the hard disk where the file should be saved. Pick whatever folder works for you. Now there's a few other options, but the main one I recommend selecting is numbering before label track name. This will save each song file with a number at the start of the file name, so that by default they will play in their original order when you load the tracks on a music player. Now we click on Export. The program will ask us to confirm the metadata for each song we're going to export. As you can see, every song now has its complete information shown in the data boxes. We'll just click OK for each one to confirm. And now the encoding starts. Audacity will now save every song we've labeled as its own file. This could take a while depending on the speed of your computer and the export settings you've picked. Now at last it's done. All the files have been saved successfully. We can verify this by opening the File Explorer and going to the folder where we chose to save the songs. And lo and behold, there they are on our hard disk. This is the moment of truth. Playing our newly exported files on a standard music player. Let's open one of them up. And success! It's playing successfully. That's it, folks. We've now saved a digital transfer of a vinyl record, which we can put onto any device we want and play wherever we want. I really hope you found this method helpful and rewarding. It's a great way of enjoying your record collection when you don't have a turntable around, and it will preserve the distinct sound of your records too. Thanks for watching, everyone. Be sure to like this video if you liked it, dislike it if you didn't, and if you want to see more videos, go ahead and subscribe. See you next time.